Good morning, everyone. Thank you for being flexible. We thought we had our bases covered at the town hall, but a lot going on this morning, so understandable, but at least it's a beautiful day. So, just so you know, Jeff is from Westborough TV is recording our meeting this morning. So I thought, given that we have a few guests here today, it might be helpful if we just went around the room quickly and introduce ourselves so that everyone knows who's here. Okay. I will start. I'm Bonnie Sullivan, the chair of the Westborough Economic Development Committee.
I'm Todd Alexander, a member of the Economic Development Committee.
Fred Leonardo, Building Commissioner in town.
John Steinberg, Chief Assessor.
Kristen Belanger, I'm the admin in the planning department, and I take the minutes.
I'm Pete Allen, I'm an EDC ambassador.
I'm Meredith Taylor, I'm a co-owner of Lindsay Taylor Spotty here in town.
I'm Alston Viaduct, the other co-owner and guest today.
And I'm Lester Hensley. I'm past chair of the Economic Development Committee, but here in my capacity as chair of the Master Plan Advisory Committee.
Jason Talich, Executive Director of the 495 Metro West Partnership.
Wendy Adams, Managing Editor, Community Advocate newspaper.
Michelle Miller, Director for the Center for Women in Enterprise.
Linda Townsend, member of the EDC board.
Chris Payne, Public Works Director.
Christy Williams, Town Manager.
Kim Foster, Assistant Town Manager.
Great. Well, thank you. Thank you to our guests. We appreciate you coming. And I'm probably going to move from some of the comments on the outreach, actually, which is our most important priority, but given our time constraints, I hope we can cover that a little bit later in the agenda. I did want to vote on the to approve the minutes from the February meeting. Something like
motion to approve the minutes.
Okay. All in favor?
I'll second that.
All in favor? Okay. Great. So approved. Thank you. So we wanted to welcome Jason Haylage, who recently joined the 495 Metro West Partnership as the Executive Director. If you want to come up, Jason.
Sure.
We had asked Jason to join us given our discussion on the master plan today. You feel free to stand or whatever you're comfortable.
Might be easier to sit actually.
Well, then you'll be
Sure.
seen on the.
There we go.
Yeah.
Excellent. I'll do that.
So, Jason recently joined the 495 Metro West Partnership, and we thought it was an opportunity to introduce him, given the importance of partnerships and regionalization. And we thought it would be great if he was part of our discussion this morning. So, thank you for joining us, Jason.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate the opportunity. And if nobody minds, I do have a phone right here, and the reason being I've learned in my first few weeks on the partnership that I can talk at great length about the partnership, and I want to make sure I don't overstay my welcome, so I'm just going to keep an eye on my own time so I don't go on for a half hour and ruin your entire meeting.
We wouldn't allow it, especially this morning.
Thank you for having me. My name is Jason Haylage. I am entering my 6th week as the Executive Director of the 495 Metro West Partnership. Very excited to be taking on this role. Many of you are familiar with our organization. Many of you are familiar with my longtime predecessor, Paul Matthews, who of course is in the role for about 15 years. We are very excited to be headquartered right here in Westborough, obviously one of our 35 communities, but we base our operations on Freiburg Parkway, right near 495 itself. So I really appreciate the opportunity to come and speak to you all. I'm just going to tell you a little bit about the partnership, and again, I know some of you are familiar, and then maybe some of the things that we're going to be doing in the coming weeks and months. So for those who don't know, and for those who may be watching at home certainly, what is the partnership? Our mission statement, the 495 Metro West Partnership, is a unique collaboration among municipalities, businesses, and other stakeholders. It's a regional leader for creating and sustaining economic growth and regional prosperity, and focuses on a number of issue areas, including transportation, water resources, energy resources. Our service area comprises 35 cities and towns, so if you're looking on a map, think west to east, Shrewsbury all the way to Natick, north to south, Westford, all the way down to Foxborough. Very large region, a very important region to the Commonwealth economically, and what are the different constituent elements that make up the partnership? Who are the partners themselves? Municipal governments, businesses, state legislators, higher education institutions, planners, developers, environmentalists, and other regional partners including RTAs and chambers of commerce. And what is it that the partnership does? In truth, the partnership does quite a bit. In my first few weeks here, I've tried to break down the partnership's work into 4 broad categories: advocacy, information, coordination, and economic development. Advocacy is something that I put first, and Why? If you look at this region on a map, and if you think about this region is certainly critically important to the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. In population, it's over 600,000 residents, approaching the population of the city of Boston itself. It is a vital economic engine for the Commonwealth. 1 in 10 jobs in the Commonwealth is located here in the 495 Metro West corridor. It's about $25 billion in annual payroll that are generated here. We have an extremely highly skilled and well-educated workforce, including when compared to the rest of the state. And of course, this is a very highly educated, highly skilled state. And when you look at it from that perspective, this region could have enormous voice and enormous power when it chooses to assert itself. But Boston has a mayor who can pick up the phone. So does Worcester, so does Springfield. Boston has 1 chamber of commerce, so does Worcester, that are largely thought to be speaking for those communities on issues of public policy and economic development, issues pertaining to the business community. It's been historically much harder for the Metro West region to define itself and to have that level of definition. First of all, as folks in this room know, the term Metro West only dates back about 35 years to begin with. But this region that the partnership serves is 35 separate municipal governments. That's 35 separate political entities, most of whom don't have a single elected executive. It is different businesses, it is different industry clusters, it is communities that are united on some fronts and differ on others. We have large cities such as Framingham and Marlborough. We have very small communities such as Berlin and Bellingham that all have different ideas about what kind of community that they want to be and what kind of place they want to live in, of course with some common threads. So what is the role the partnership plays here? The partnership has the ability to come in and be a common voice on issues where there is commonality among the partnership's various elements. And what might those be? 35 cities and towns, lots of different perspectives. What are the issues where there is common interest among the region? Well, this partnership has historically done a lot of its advocacy work through committees that are focused on issues. And if you look at our committees, you're going to see a quick window into what some of those issues are. Transportation, chief among them. It doesn't do any of our communities well to advocate on transportation by themselves. Transportation is very much a regional issue. It's a statewide issue, but it's most effective, obviously, to be able to speak as a region. Also, energy and sustainable development, water resources, and something that I'm going to be restarting in my first few months in this role is actually a committee focused on housing and housing challenges faced by our region. Transportation, I want to touch on just a little bit. Obviously, transportation is dominating a lot of the policy conversation on Beacon Hill right now. The partnership is actually in the process of developing its own position on transportation revenues, but there are a number of issues where the partnership has long-standing positions where we're going to continue to be very forceful and effective advocates. And sometimes that's on specific highway interchange projects. So for example, the partnership was a leading voice on the need to improve the 495 Massachusetts Turnpike interchange. That's something that's going to be coming up in a few years. We're going to continue to make sure the public is having as much access to information as possible. The partnership has long hosted regular briefings with representatives from Mass DOT and other actors involved in those projects. We're going to continue to do that in the coming months and years as that project gets underway. Commuter rail constraints. Obviously, reliability along the Framingham-Worcester line is something that folks in this room are very familiar with. Something that folks in this room are also very familiar with is parking constraints at commuter rail stations, and Westborough being one of those places where it's real tough to get a spot after 7:15 in the morning, I'm told. So that's something the partnership has been speaking up about for a number of years and will continue to do so. One issue that's really going to come to dominate the agenda with us when it comes to transportation, who here is familiar with the Alston multimodal project? One hand went up, so for those who are not, two, there we go. For those who may not be, and I won't go too far down a rabbit hole here, but Mass DOT in the coming decade intends to replace the Alston Viaduct. That's a section of the Massachusetts Turnpike that carries pike traffic into and out of the city of Boston through the Alston neighborhood. It's going to be a complete replacement of the roadway, and it's going to involve some other important work, including rail work and allowing that neighborhood to better access open space along the river. Very important, needed project. But for between 8 and 10 years, it's going to reduce the capacity of the pike by at least a lane in each direction and simultaneously take the commuter rail from 2 tracks down to 1. So for folks living in our region, this could be especially difficult, especially when you also consider the potential for this work to maybe begin right around the same time that 495 pike interchange work is happening. So the partnership is going to be a very loud, very aggressive voice for the need for a Metro West specific mitigation strategy to be in place prior to this project getting underway. It's important to the 33,000 residents of this region who commute in and out of Boston every single day. It's important to the businesses who have commuters, who have staff who come in from the city of Boston, and Westborough being a net importer of labor. You guys know that many of our large employers depend on the ability of folks to come out of the 128 area to work here. And of course, for any industry that has freight or shipping as central to their work, that is going to be very important. So the partnership is going to be a very loud voice on that front. I'm already going down the rabbit hole and starting to abuse my time, so I'll move on very quickly just to touch on a couple of other topics. Areas where the partnership has been very active. Water resources, something that a lot of our communities and our region have in common. New England obviously struggles with an aging water infrastructure, and municipalities left holding the bag when it comes to funding some of those projects. The partnership has long been an advocate for increased financial support for cities and towns as they address some of those issues. To the extent that Westborough is going to be working on any of those projects, partnership is right there to be an advocate with you. And of course, when you look at industries and employers in the health sciences and life sciences industry, water capacity is a very special concern for some of those entities. Partnership is happy to be a voice in support of your community on those issues. And then just to touch on some of the other work that the partnership does. So I mentioned information. One thing that the partnership has been consistently doing for many years now is putting out informational resources that are free and available to the public that contains some great data about our region and about our specific municipalities that can be used for a variety of purposes. Every year we put out something called our Strength in Numbers Report. It is a great set of data on the region that includes everything from demographic information, economic touch points, information on annual payroll, commuting habits, commuting patterns. We also work with CBRE every year to do an annual report on the region specific to commercial real estate, and that actually has a component where we do a separate report specific to each of the 35 municipalities in the region. We're going to be continuing to do that as well. We also do Metro West on the Go, which is a report that started 2 years ago that focuses more specifically on commuting patterns, including industry clusters that different commuters coming in and out of areas are taking on. And then just two other issue areas that the partnership touches on, or two other areas of categories of work for us: coordination and economic development. Coordination, as you know, the disparate elements of the partnership, sometimes there's interest in getting those folks together, but it's not always easy to convene. Those settings, the partnership is here as a convening resource. I know that one of the conversations you're going to be having today is about regionalization, and to the extent that the partnership can help bring other stakeholders to the table, whether that be municipal governments, whether that be business entities, chambers of commerce, environmental groups, groups that are focused on protecting natural resources, that by very definition of having sort of a diverse range of partners in our partnership, we stand ready to be a resource to bring various and diverse groups, people, and organizations to the table, and we're happy to do that on behalf of the town of Westborough. And then finally, of course, economic development. Partnership engages in some direct economic development work in a number of ways, including maintaining relationships with some of the employers who are active participants in our partnership, as well as conducting an annual employer survey. We keep our pulse, especially when it comes to larger employers, on why employers would choose to locate in the Metro West region in the first place, and if they're considering leaving, what some threats to that might be. And in just my first few weeks, that's been something I've been spending a lot of time on, reaching out to some of our larger employers, having conversations, what are the advantages you see to being here? What are some of the threats? And I'll tell you that most of the folks I've talked to are really happy to be in the Metro West. Spoiler alert on the threats: transportation and housing, becoming serious workforce issues for a lot of our employers. So with that, I think I've gone a little bit over my 10 minutes, but I want to thank you for taking the time to reach out to me. The Westborough Economic Development Committee does some very impressive work, and the partnership stands ready to be of service to you in whatever way possible. And I'm happy to take any questions you might have.
Thank you very much, Jason. It's really, as I should point out that with all that the partnership does, there is a staff of 2 people. So
we also have a co-op from Northeast.
Co-op, okay. So, but a very engaged board, which they're able, I think a great deal of what you do is collaboration and engaging public and private sector. So the town's involvement is for municipalities. We're able to be involved as members as well.
Sure. So Westborough is a member community. There's a formalized way in which municipalities may have a representative on the board if that's something that they wish, but the partnership's activities, including committee meetings, are open to all. Unlike, for example, a Chamber of Commerce or another organization where you get a certain type of membership based on what you pay, the partnership is not a pay-to-play structure. Everyone is welcome at the table. So to the extent that there are forums or committee meetings, and those are in particular where issues get dealt with, those are open to any interested person or partner.
So it is a public-private partnership, and they do wonderful work. Was a past board member myself, so thank you very much, and thank you for staying and participating in our conversation on the master plan.
Thank you. Appreciate you guys having me.
Great, thank you. I'd now like to, don't need to introduce Lester Hensley, but ask Lester to come up and begin our discussion. Certainly want to begin by saying thank you for your leadership and congratulations on a successful public forum on Saturday. That was really well attended, and I think a lot of great ideas were surfaced. So
Yeah, thank you very
Lester.
much, Bonnie. So here to talk about the master plan. We did have our first public hearing on Saturday. We had over 100 attendees, a wonderful turnout, a great deal of engagement. Many of you were there. I would love to hear your thoughts on it rather than mine. I don't know if anybody would like to throw anything out other than Bonnie's comments. I know Peter was there, Fred, Bonnie, Christine, and Chris. Chris, what are your thoughts on what transpired on Saturday?
In general, I thought it was very productive, very streamlined, so that we actually got to the point and walked away with some outputs, and so hopefully, we can turn that into something.
Great. Anyone else?
I think it was great for us to hear, especially for staff to hear, from lots of different sections of the public that we don't hear from, and I think, a lot of the ideas sort of were in line with what we were thinking, but we heard some new things that are always good to hear.
Excellent. Right?
Yeah, I thought it was a great turnout. I was impressed. The conversations were good. The only thing I'd suggest in future meetings, maybe keep the presentations down a little bit, because there's a lot of information for the people that were there, and I don't know if they were able to absorb all that.
Good feedback. Thank you. Peter?
I thought the turnout was great, but I need to give a heads up or kudos to the town staff themselves. I mean, I think the townspeople who were there recognized that it was a Saturday morning, and there were an awful lot of people from the staff, and it was just wonderful to see them involved and interested in what the town wants to become.
Agreed. Yes, thank you all for being there. Sheldon?
Yes, so I thought it was fantastic. I also want to echo, it was great to see so many members of the town departments present and participating and really engaged in the conversation. I was thrilled with the turnout. As always, there's the who's not here and who's not represented, so I don't think that the demographics of Westborough were represented as well as they should be. And so you always sort of ask the question of why and how do you reach them? Is it the day, is it the time, is it, how we advertise, what have you? So I think there's some opportunity there, and I also think that those initial conversations that we have sort of lead to people wanting more. So I hope that, I know that was public meeting number 1. I think continuing that momentum to continue to engage and broaden the circle of engagement is critical to a successful master plan.
Great feedback. Thank you. And a huge shout out to Kristen as well, who did all of the back work and spearheaded the outreach that resulted in that turnout. So thank you, Kristen, for that. So maybe we'll back out a few thousand feet then from that event and talk a bit about what the master plan is. A master plan ultimately is a document that establishes a vision, a direction, and a shared definable future for a community. And it's a process that looks out 10, 15 years to imagine what the town looks like 20 years out. So we're talking about Westborough 2040. And I was very impressed to discover in this that Westborough did a master plan in 1988, updated that in 2003, and here we are again updating it in 2020. And it's not a surprise that the feedback from the community when we ask what you love about Westborough calls out the schools, the mix of open space and downtown, as well as commercial economic development, the rich cultural and historical history of the community. And the balance of those elements is no mistake. It's a consequence of planning. And in fact, the establishment of the Economic Development Committee was envisioned in the 2003 master plan, right? And it came to fruition as an act of the Board of Selectmen in 2008, appropriately right at the beginning of the Great Recession. and got our community engaged in retaining and thanking our commercial base, right? And so I think it's really important that communities do plan and look out a long way. And the real challenge of a master plan, because it's very easy in our daily lives to get stuck in the doing of a task or to get stuck in the constraints of achieving something bigger, right? That we don't think about a shared, defined future free of those constraints. So to guide the remaining one-year-long process, we have divided that process into 3 thematic areas. So the first is Westborough Reflects, which is a period of reflecting on what it is that we love about the community and what perhaps our opportunities are in the community. The second phase, Westborough Explores, in which we will then brainstorm some really big ideas or ways to achieve what we've defined in the reflection period. And then ultimately Westborough Commits, which will be the last approximately 3 months of this process, in which we take the ideas, the objectives and goals, and put them into the document that hopefully will become a reference point for all of the town boards, committees, etc., to engage in. And if they all do their part, we should see Vision 2040 emerge. So that really is the background of what we're doing. Economic development, of course, is an essential part of achieving this vision and this future. But it's only one part. And I think what we're learning from the feedback from the community is that all of the things that make Westborough the great place that it is sort of meet at a nexus. And it's harmonizing all of those interests without emasculating or creating a tipping point for any one of them. That is the real challenge and the real balance that we're looking to achieve. So those include land use, housing, economic development, of course, natural, historic, and cultural resources, open space and recreation, public services and facilities, transportation and circulation, sustainability, and public health. So sustainability and public health are 2 sort of a-traditional areas in master planning. But Westborough has chosen to add those because they are becoming significant drivers of of challenges that we face, right? So I guess the message that, if I were to ask something of the Economic Development Committee, is what role do you want to play in this process? And I'm not saying necessarily that you answer that today, but you might dedicate a portion of your next agenda to exploring that. Each of those areas that I mentioned are going to be chapters in the master plan. And we have a master plan advisory committee that is 28, I believe, individuals now, 29, which is uncharacteristically large, but I think it does reflect Westborough's emerging multi-stakeholder dialogue form of government and openness. And so it's wonderful to have the town department heads as members of that committee. But that group has been divided up into subcommittees that will address each of these chapter areas. So I sit on the Economic Development Committee subcommittee with Christy Williams, town manager, and Amber Bach, our superintendent of schools. So it's a 3-person subcommittee. We have met once. We have another meeting coming up on the 9th. Is that right? 16th? All right, we'll let you know. These will be posted on the town calendar. They're open meetings. And if any of you individually want to have input into that, or if you decide as an Economic Development Committee that you want to bring some ideas forward, we would encourage that and we would welcome that.
It's the 9th, you're right, at 5 o'clock.
9th at 5 p.m., okay, at the town manager's office. So I think this might be an opportunity also for the Economic Development Committee to take a moment to reflect on its purpose. I think what's emerging from the feedback from the community is that one of the things that they want, maybe the 2 areas of economic development to focus on. The first is a more vibrant, we've had the word hipper downtown, a downtown that is both accessible by biking and walking, but also has ample parking, that has a greater diversity of storefronts that will attract, just a more vibrant outcome. So to achieve that, you begin to need to look at all of the other areas of land use, of zoning, of transportation and parking studies, etc. So some things are in play already, right? We know these issues exist and this desire exists, but we really need now to envision ultimately what it looks like and then explore and commit to maybe some really bold moves in order to achieve it. And there's an article on the town warrant in March to acquire a parcel of land 2 parcels down from here, right, to create more downtown parking. And it's envisioned that some of our town employees might park there, freeing up space among our, among the vendors and the businesses downtown for more access. That's the kind of thinking that we need to begin to adopt and take some bold moves. And then, of course, a lot of the feedback that we're getting in engaging the community, which we're doing in multiple ways. We're taking the master plan input process to the senior center, to the library, to the high school, to the holiday stroll, and doing posted polls where it's a non-digital way of gathering feedback. We also have running now the first online survey that residents can take at westboroughmasterplan.com. We encourage everybody to take a few minutes to log in and do that. It'll take a total of 15 minutes. But one of the other themes we're hearing is that there are members in our community that are cost burdened in living here. And particularly a set of our senior population on fixed incomes. So paying for these grand visions is going to require, if we desire to maintain the mix across the demographics in our town, of maybe some creative taxation processes. I think it's been mentioned to me that Concord, for example, has a tax fairness policy that they've developed to try to offset the burden to certain people so that they can remain in the community. So these might be elements of the master plan that assist in ensuring that this vision is shared across the community. I know that there's amazing work already being done at the town level on housing affordability. The senior taxation, the Senior Disabled Taxation Relief Committee that Jonathan chairs is now being established and funded. It's a place that people who can and maybe have a surplus in their ability to live in Westborough can donate and can provide by giving back to these funds, a way to assist and allow other people to share what we have in terms of a vision. So as you as an Economic Development Committee ponder what your actions will be, one is this: how do we create this vibrant, accessible downtown? The second one is, what do we do in terms of creating value-added tax uses in our commercial sector? Right, so we have, through this committee, done a lot of things over the years. The establishment of Westborough as an economic tax area allowed us to negotiate TIFs and draw some employers to the area. We now have the Olympus development, we have the Amazon development, so we're maybe past a period of desperation to fill space that was born of the 2008 recession. And we're now in a position to ask how do we reduce our vacancy rate in our commercial areas? Because it's through the reduction of vacancy rate, the generation of revenue from those optimized parcels, that the tax base on commercial is increased. And it's only in that way that the commercial side of the business of the town can actually contribute more to achieving this defined future. So that does bring me back to the outreach program that we established and why I think that's so important, right? The purpose of that is to reach out to our existing tenants, to ask them how they're doing, what are their plans, are they going to expand, Thank you for being here. Let us help you expand in Westborough, right? We also need to hear and engage with the Metro West Partnership on these regional issues, because everything that we envision for Westborough could just be choked if we don't deal with the broader regional issues. And if you look at how Jason defined their service area, right, Westborough sits right smack dab at the nexus of that area, right, and at what I've been calling the crossroads of the Commonwealth, right, 495, the Pike, Route 9, the commuter rail, and accessing and maximizing the use of that infrastructure is going to be key to us developing in the future. So that's how I see it at the moment. My challenge to you is to convene around this issue and ask, what do we as an economic development committee, what role do we want to play? What do we want of our ideas reflected in this master plan? And provide feedback through the economic development subcommittee so that we can incorporate that. And I'd challenge you again to follow that thematic path. So start really broad with this reflects period, without constraint of how to pay for it or what to do or what it is. Just what's the ideal? What does it look like 20 years from now? And then when we move into the explores phase, reconvene again and say, okay, how do we now, what are the programs we put in place to achieve that? And then join us ultimately in looking at the commits period when we put that in writing.
So
Questions?
Yeah, so you mentioned that there's a subcommittee that 3 of you are on right now. So would you envision that the EDC have sort of a work session and bring that feedback to the subcommittee? Is that
Yes.
the most effective way to do that? Okay.
Correct.
And what is the period of reflect? When does that sort of close out, and when do we move into the next phases?
So the 3 periods, I don't know if I printed out what they are.
I just don't.
They're on the website, westboroughmasterplan.com. No, I didn't print that page.
That's
but
okay.
We're about, Kristen, what, 3 weeks into period 1? A month, maybe?
I think that the first session, isn't that ending?
The 31st? Is that when the survey closes?
The survey closes the 31st.
And is that kind of end the reflection?
Yeah, like I think May was the beginning of that first phase, then we move into the next one.
Okay. Anyway, they're on the website. They are defined.
Yeah. Okay.
So yes, if you could have a brainstorming session around each of those phases and get that feedback to us, we will be sure to ensure that that's coordinated. We are working with VHB, a consultant who will ultimately compile the document, but it's important now that we share with them what we are visioning for the town.
One suggestion on the master plan site, I mean, it's just, I don't know what our capabilities, it's not on our hot topics, it's not a quick link right now, so you have to sort of go and layer into finding it.
You're talking about from the town site?
From the town site.
Okay, great suggestions.
So just if we can get that a little more at the top of the list, that would be great.
Christie's nodding.
I know.
Taken care of.
We just got an email, so.
Oh,
get it.
well, there you go. Yeah, super, thank you. Yeah, as I was going to look for it right now, I'm like, okay, where do I, rather than plug it in.
Do we have it on the economic development?
No, we talked about, I think the request was to put it right off of the homepage, so
Yes,
as soon
okay.
as somebody opens up the
Yeah.
town's website. it's
Right,
super.
that'd be great.
Yeah.
Thanks.
So if I could as well, we're currently without an economic development coordinator, and I would encourage you to have a brainstorming session around what that role looks like as we look to fulfill that role. What is this? Is the role bigger than what we've had it in the past? I think many of you know my opinion that that individual should be really a sales-driven person. It should be somebody who's going to set up and manage and leverage the power of the ambassador program for outreach, so that the ambassadors are given 2 or 3 assignments every month. But beyond that, we might be talking about somebody who is capable of engaging the business community 2 or 3 years in advance of actually achieving something. So if, for example, we say to secure a vibrant downtown community, we would prefer that our street level storefronts are not service-oriented, like, real estate or insurance agencies or whatever it is, and that they're boutiques and restaurants and that type of thing. Maybe there's a need for somebody who's able to engage the existing tenants and talk about their plans and see whether there isn't a convergence point 3, 4, 5 years out where those storefronts might turn over to a different use. And at the same time be engaging the broader entrepreneurial world to say, if we had a space available to you for a particular purpose, would you be interested in downtown Westborough? So it might be that this coordinator position is somebody with more of a vision, more of an ability to connect, and somebody that can actually implement this grand design that we come up with for downtown. So I think it's probably a moment for some reflection on what we're looking for in that role.
And certainly our staffing study that we're undertaking now will help, I think, to add input to that.
It may well, yeah.
I would hope so.
That's the intent.
Yeah.
Any other questions or feedback for the committee? I will say that your feedback is welcome as a committee and as individuals at any time. So through the master plan website, there's a place for questions. I think we're going to try and change that to questions and comments. You can submit them there. You can certainly submit them through the planning office. I know Jim Robbins is a member of this committee, so you're no stranger to progress on that. But ideas on how to improve outreach, to improve diversity at our next meetings. The next 2 public hearings will be thematically inserted into Explores and Commit. So we hope that we build on the momentum of this great event we just had last week. And we do have a number of ideas to spread the outreach through our faith groups as well as through other means to improve the demographic spread and reflect the real face of Westborough.
I thought it was a great marching order that you gave the people that attended to say, go out to, take the flyer and give it to, a local business person. Or in my mind, I was thinking I have a couple of new neighbors who are a younger generation. And I thought, wow, new to town would be a great way to engage them. So, don't know whether it will succeed.
Tell 10 people you
No,
know.
absolutely,
Right, yeah.
it will succeed. The repetition of what's going on to whoever you engage is very important. And thank you, Bonnie, for circulating the announcement for the public meeting, right? If you send it out to this committee and each of you on the committee sends it out to 10 other people, even if they've seen it before, and one of those people shows up, we've broadened our reach. Westborough Connects has become a wonderful partner in getting the word out. Westborough TV is doing an amazing job in really getting the word out. But what we can each do individually is as effective as anything else that we can do. So thank you for that.
Great, thank you, Lester. And certainly the Economic Development Committee Subcommittee is very important given the representation that we have with the town manager, the head, the superintendent of schools, and with Lester as the chair of the Master Plan Advisory Committee. So our input will be very, taken forward with.
Absolutely, will be heard. Yes, yes.
One of the themes that I heard at the table that I was sitting at was education, and there's so much that's may be underway that we may just not be aware of. And I don't know, as we're looking at everything as part of the master plan, if there's looking at all of the organizations and subcommittees and what role does everyone play and what services are out there, because I know there's a great deal that I'm not familiar with, and I'm sure that's the case for many people.
I heard that as well from a couple of other tables, and this question of communication and what is a big one. I know it's a central question that our town manager is dealing with. I think the staffing study might inform that as well. But certainly there is, I think what the meeting surfaced, because we're exploring what you love about Westborough, is the abundance of amazing programs and amenities that do exist, many of which are maybe not known to certain people. Right. Now, if you're not looking, you may not find them, right? But that doesn't mean we shouldn't be utilizing as broad a communication strategy as we can to let people know. And I think Westborough TV has expressed an interest in doing a better job of communicating everything that is going on, although they do such a phenomenal job already. If you engage their site and the work that they do, it's a great source of information.
Keith?
I guess I'd like to make one observation, since we do have Westborough TV recording and we have community advocate represented here as well, a couple of our wonderful communications mechanisms for the community. When I went to the meeting last Saturday, then I heard that, you know, it's important to go online and do the survey. My initial thought when I came home after a day or so was, well, I went to the meeting, so why do the survey? And I think it's very important. I did go on and do the survey, and the great thing about it was it kind of forced me to say, which of these things is more important than the others in your mind? And I think that would be very important to basically say, just because you went to the meeting, don't not do the survey. And it's a way for people reading about the plan that weren't there to say, your input can get in there, but it needs to get in there by the end of whichever month this is going to close out. So I think that's something that we need to really publicize to the many people who weren't there, and even to the ones who were.
Great point.
I think it would be great to get the school system, to get the students, especially at the high school, to complete the survey.
They talked about that at the end. I think Emma's going to share the survey.
Right.
Because the DHB made that point, and we saw in the bar chart that the 18 to 26-year-olds weren't well represented.
Right, at that event,
At
correct.
that event, right.
Yeah, so you're
Not
absolutely
surprising,
right.
yeah.
Actually, Jim is working on engaging the civics.
He's reached out to the teacher there that does the civics club.
Oh, yeah.
So the thing that we have to wrap our heads around is that the high school students are being invited, but they're not participating. So, you know, how do we make that jump?
Why is
How
that,
do we
right?
get them to be excited about it? So just thinking about those kinds of things.
But I would like to underscore two comments that Peter made. First of all, the Community Advocate is our hometown paper, right? And so we need to partner with the Community Advocate to continue to get the word out, both on the master plan, the need for and the opportunity for our residents to be heard through the various things, as well as perhaps share a more regular story about what it is that we are working on. I think that two things that I mentioned, the Senior Disabled Tax Relief Committee is a manifestation of the community's sincere care for ensuring that across demographics people can afford to remain in town and not be cost burdened, as is the Affordable Housing Forum that was held, and that could result in the creation of an affordable housing trust perhaps in the fall, and that these are opportunities for people to who have the means to do some planned giving around funding these support services that are being created. I think it's a big misconception that the town doesn't care about this issue. There's an awful lot of work and a lot of people putting a lot of time into finding ways to relieve that burden.
I think that comes back to the communication, you know, the people not being aware, and as you said, if you're not looking, you're not going to find it. I think that's, so, and when you do hear that from people, you think, if you only knew.
Yeah.
So, well, great, thank you, Lester. We could talk for hours. Thank you.
Thank you.
To comment briefly on outreach, I do want to mention that we are in a position now without an economic development coordinator. However, we are working with the town to leverage the resources that we have available in the interim. We just came out of our annual year in review with our breakfast, and that I think serves is a great opportunity for us, because it really was reaching out to the local companies, and we had 175 people that registered and attended, but we had many others that we invited, and the invitations were a result of an effort to look at who all the local companies are, past award recipients, major employers. So we really did reach out to the community. It could always be improved, but with the resources that we had available, the database, and we did do that. In fact, we had Curry Printing provided us with hard copies of the invitations, and our committee went around to town handing them out to people. So we have a lot of work to do there, but we did do that. And coming away from it, I know I had a couple of meetings where I was able to engage the people from Cumberland Farms. There's new leadership there, and we're able to get them to attend the meeting. I also, the former Microchem, it's now Kayaku, we're going to set up a meeting, and they'd like to bring in the different town departments. So those are two. I've also reached out to Neotech over by the train station. So I think we have, the breakfast did provide us an opportunity to engage and to reach out, and it was a nice event to, but I think there's a lot of follow through now. So our challenge is with our committee and the ambassadors that we have is to try to continue and to prioritize the outreach and to to work with what resources we have to continue that momentum. And I think it is so important to have those conversations. So it's a matter of prioritizing. So,
add to that?
Sure.
So one thing, I think our Chamber of Commerce, the Quarter 9 Chamber of Commerce, as it's now known, has done a great job as of, I think, even the past 6 months, going out to businesses and celebrating their membership within the chamber. And I know Rocco's has been a great participant. I think they bring them donuts and they do a photo op. And so at least on social media, I've seen a real effort from the chamber to do that. This committee, this town, is a member of the chamber. And I'm wondering if there's an opportunity to have a conversation with Karen Chapman to say, hey, when you're going out to do these, we're a member of the chamber, we're an integral part of celebrating that business's success. That's a great opportunity to be kind of at that thank you moment and celebratory kind of, event, if you will, specific to the businesses that are here at Westborough, because they're really initiating that outreach. But I think it would be great if we were, it's sort of like an open invitation. The event is already happening. We don't have to do a lot of heavy lifting to initiate a meeting or coordinate it. It's already underway.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. No, I think that's a good idea. I think Karen has done a good job of engaging us and notifying us of ribbon cuttings, and we, are attending. But you're saying in addition to ribbon cuttings?
Yeah, no, in addition.
Yeah.
I mean, the ribbon cuttings are great, and I think we should always, have, representation there. But these are, I'll call them pop-up celebrations, and I think it might be, I'm happy to reach out on behalf of the committee to have that conversation, or if someone from the town wants to do that directly, it doesn't matter to me, but I just think it would be, I think it helps the chamber, and I think it helps certainly the town.
Okay.
I don't know what the other members think about that.
I'd like to build on that too. We have the Quarter 1995 Expo coming up on April 1st, and I was hoping that we could put together some sort of, what is the purpose, what is the conversation, what will we bring, what are we hoping to achieve, because that's certainly an opportunity to set up meetings and engage with the community as well. The business community really turns out to that event.
Yeah.
So I'm happy to work with initiatives.
Great.
I know at our last meeting, Linda, I think we were struggling, to be honest with you,
Yes.
in terms of who is actually going to be there. I'm out of town, Todd, I think you're out of town.
Right.
I also was tied up as well.
Yeah.
Well, I know, I was going to bring that up under other business,
Okay.
who can be there and
Right. It
what
is,
can we
yeah.
do.
Good. Why don't we move right into the priorities update from Kim now, because that is one of the items. But
Okay.
we're not, certainly, as we all know, when you raise your hand with a new idea, you own it. So, Linda, we would definitely welcome your involvement. And I know you do a great job in adding, broadening the current representation that we have. We've been at the expo, and Jim Robbins has done a great job of keeping us involved, but there's so much more we can do and take away from the event. So I'll pass it over to Kim.
Yeah. Thank you. So let me start with that one. So the expo is April 1st, which is a Wednesday, 4 to 8 p.m. I have spoken with Karen Chapman. We'll have an exhibit there, a table to set everything up. We take what we want. My understanding is Jim Robbins has been has spearheaded that in terms of getting everything there. So he is obviously not here today. I'll coordinate with him. The exhibitor packet will be going out next week. So once we have that, Karen said expect it's similar to as it has been in past years. But Jim and I can coordinate the schedule, make sure we have coverage and people there
Right.
to support.
And Pete Allen has been a
Yes.
great partner with us, being right there with SCORE. We've brought our 2 pull-up banners. I think I mentioned
Yeah.
we had the 2 laptops with the EDC.
So we'll coordinate all
Yeah,
of that
okay.
Going forward. So can certainly send an update and we'll reach out if we realize we have any gaps or could use some assistance in getting additional coverage.
Great, good. And you've got Linda to work with you now,
Yeah.
so, yeah.
Linda, your name's on my
To add
paper.
some new
Happy to help.
creative
I mean, I
new-
guess that what I would ask is, and we don't need to decide it here or talk about it here, but what is the purpose? What is the conversation that we have within the booth? Why are we there? What are we hoping to achieve and take away? And I'm certainly happy to help put that together and participate as well. Release has a booth there, and I need to be there at least, what I've said to my team is at least half the time, so I could probably be in an EDC booth as well.
Great, thank you.
The other thing that I would like to spend a couple more minutes talking about is, and I think it dovetails nicely with Lester's comments on the master plan, and one of the things that's being heard is the desire for a more vibrant downtown, greater diversity of storefronts. The state, through its Economic Assistance Coordinating Council, has added to its Economic Development Incentive Program. One of the new incentives are tax credits to businesses that locate in a vacant downtown storefront. The way the program will work, it's a new program just being rolled out. So the first step is for the town to identify a vacant storefront district, and then that has to go to the EAC and get approved. So they have guidelines on what's required. But what I would propose, I think maybe staff could pull something together. I think there's probably some work for staff to do. Bring something back to the committee, get some feedback, determine what everybody's feeling makes sense to go forward with. It will be a multi-step process. The first phase is getting that designation to have the vacant, excuse me, this vacant storefront district approved. And then there is an opportunity for up to 2 businesses annually to receive up to a $10,000 tax credit through the state's EDIP program. However, there is a matching component that the town has to provide, and my thoughts are our grant program is probably an ideal source for that match. Given that the grant subcommittee is looking at how that process works and how those funds might be designated if it becomes a competitive process, I think there's probably a need to coordinate how these two would work together. The 2 grants get designated to potentially go to businesses that are in vacant storefronts, and we can work with the businesses to apply for this. I think there's some thinking on how that would all just play out. One of the things we have to think about, the EACC's timeline, they have a meeting in June, they have a meeting in September, so we need to figure out when we might be ready to go before them. Realizing that our grant funds come in at the end of the year, I think we just have to back up into a timeline. And probably, again, if staff start to do some work on this at the next meeting, we should have a better sense of what that process and timeline might look like. The one thing that's nice is based on the application that is online, it doesn't seem like an onerous process for a business to apply for the grant, and I think it's something that they would work with the town, we could be of assistance. Again, I think it's just that piece of figuring out what do they need to have at the time that they go forward. Do they need to have their small business grant approved through the subcommittee? I think it's just some of those nuances that we're gonna have to really work out. The other thing is, Kevin Kuros, who's our liaison, the way it works right now, the tax credits are up to $10,000. If the community matches 5,000 of that, The state is likely to provide 5,000 in tax credits. They may exceed the town's match depending on how they rate the project, but we might need to give some thought to, again, it's a new program, it's still playing out, and Kevin said some of this will probably get, as they get more applicants in front of them. But the question is, if we limit the grant program to $5,000, does that limit the business to $5,000 from the state?
Right.
Unless they can make a really compelling case.
Yep.
But I think a lot of
great.
that's to be seen. It's a brand new program.
Right, yep. I'm not sure, were you here when Kevin came in? Kevin Kuros, okay, so he, most of us met him. He's the new regional director for the, Metro West for the Massachusetts Office of Business Development. And he came in and gave us an overview and introduced the program. So thank you for looking into it further. One of the things we were concerned about was whether there was a deadline, so.
It's a rolling.
Yeah, good.
They don't
Great.
have many communities that have gotten to the point of, I guess, opting into
Right,
it.
yeah. So that definitely does align with the master plan of identifying what we would prioritize, what areas. And when we look at some of the grants that have come before us, as well as some that are kind of pending and changing, it could be definitely further discussion. Maybe we should move further into that in the subcommittee discussions.
I think so. What the evaluation of applicants at the state level, applications will be considered on a competitive basis, taking into account factors such as the potential synergy with other downtown businesses, commitment to storefront improvements, and whether the municipality has made local plans or investments to revitalize the downtown. So I think there's some, I think we're well poised to help businesses make a strong case for these grants.
Great, excellent. And there's also a program that the Mass Development has that they've used effectively, I know in Ashland and in Northampton, where you engage a community in building out, I can't think of the name of it, but I think we may find that there are different programs that we can use to kind of build on the idea. So that's great. Thank you, Kim. Did you have anything else you wanted to? Okay. All right. So I think I mentioned that there are various issues that we're working on that the EDC coordinator had handled previously that we're coordinating with, Shelby and I are coordinating with Kim and Christy so that we can try to keep things going in the midst of many of us being volunteers. So just balancing our time constraints. We are past our time frame. However, I know we had a couple of items. I don't know, or Shelby, I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. I just wanted to call everyone's attention to town meeting that will be coming up on the 23rd, right? 28th, thank you. Sorry, so many March dates in my head. So March 28th, thank you. Typically, the EDC has considered the warrant before the town's legislative body and determine whether or not the EDC would want to issue a letter of support or potentially at town meeting speak in support. As I have reviewed the warrant, the one that I do think, and actually Lester Hensley already mentioned this, is article number, sorry, I should have it in front of me. It's the Grove Street, number 14, land acquisition and parking lot construction of 9 Grove Street. This is a property just down the street here, and the warrant article proposes that the town purchase it and develop parking to be used for primarily municipal purposes, but then that would offload where municipal vehicles are parked today, thus opening it up for public use, businesses, that sort of thing. So I don't know if there's, Christy, offhand, not to put you on the spot, but if there were any others that you think would be appropriate for the EDC? I mean, there's a lot in here around investments in, certainly our DPW.
I would say Article 23 is the increase of your revolving funds.
Right.
And then probably Article 26, the zoning article.
Okay, so Article 23, thank you, is to increase our revolving fund from 25,000 to 40,000. That's an obvious one of, I believe, support. And then Article 26 is
Mixed use.
Mixed use, thank you.
It allows business, if I may.
Yeah, please.
It allows businesses, it clarifies how businesses can function on a particular property. Right now, there's been some confusion on my property and the zoning enforcement officer, so that clarifies some of that and allows better expansion of commercial properties.
So are we looking to take a vote for the EDC to support these, or what do you?
We don't have, on our agenda, we don't have a vote
Vote,
stated.
right. Yep.
So, I'll have to ask the municipal folks around me. Can we issue a letter of support, or?
I think you can just take the votes. I mean, it says articles the EDC may want to support.
Okay.
I think it's fine.
Okay. All right. So I'll,
Before we
Yeah.
go, can I ask a question about Article 14,
Yep.
9 Grove Street? Is that property currently for sale? or-
Yes,
Yes.
Okay.
yeah, so it's
So-
the Kwanzaa
Kwanzaa
hut
hut.
on 9 Grove. It's for sale.
Okay,
Um,
who knows now?
We have a purchase and sale agreement with the owner to purchase it for $300,000, which is actually a little bit lower than the assessed value. And then we would build the parking lot. So the parking lot would yield 24 spaces.
Okay.
As Shelby said, you know, the selectmen can sort of designate what the use of that is gonna look like, but I would assume that at least initially, if it was gonna be restricted, it would only be during town hall hours.
Sure.
And then it would be
Yeah.
available to the public the rest of the time.
So-
We do know that there's 20, sorry. We do know that there's 20 a lack of 20 municipal spaces, but at the Forbes building, we have 20 employees more than we have spaces for parking.
So there is mention of, obviously, this being acquired by gift purchase or eminent domain?
It's just the way we write it. It's just it's just very
Oh,
typical
it's-
language.
I know.
It's not by eminent domain. We like I said, the selectmen have already signed a purchase and sale agreement with the owner, and so it would be for $300,000. And that's coming out of our sale of real estate account. So we have multiple reserve accounts, but the sale of real estate account has about $3 million in it, and so this would reduce it by $600,000.
But we have to include that language for eminent domain in there, in this article?
Well, so this can't be changed at this point. The way that the motion would read, it would just say, you know, what we intend to do, which would be the appropriation of the $600,000 for the purchase of the property. So there's no consideration of eminent domain, but that's sort of the legalese of how we have those types of articles.
Okay, that would just, yeah.
we could
that
craft
just-
our support of that.
Yeah.
I think, so, you want me to make a motion, or?
Sure, yeah.
So I'll make a motion that the EDC support Article 14 for the town to authorize the Board of Selectmen to acquire by purchase 9 Grove Street for the creation of a parking lot.
Okay, I'll second that.
And all the other language that's included in the article.
We're gonna vote.
Second?
All in favor?
Oh,
I think we already
said
seconded
that. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Opposed?
Thank you.
Anyone opposed? Not voting? Okay, great. All right, great. Yeah, no, great point. So the other piece would be the Article 23, which would increase the revolving funds. We've had extensive conversation about this. I think it dovetails right into what Kim was saying about potentially, vacant storefront, enhancing the downtown or other locations. So this would increase our revolving fund to $40,000. I'll make a motion to support Article 23.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor? Okay, great. And then finally, as Mr. Ferraro already said, Article 26 amends the zoning bylaws to provide clarification for mixed use. I'll make a motion to approve that.
Second it?
All right. Discussion? All in favor? Great. Okay. Super.
Great, so just moving down, Linda, the grant update?
I think I would defer to Shelby. I was a participant, but it was her initiative.
Oh, yeah, well, so so Linda, Fred, John and I met to talk about what do we want to do next? How do we want to sort of bring this forward, particularly in anticipation that revolving fund will increase to $40,000. So we had a I'll just leave it, we had some great discussion. I think we've definitely want to move into a more competitive, structured grant cycle. And we have some outstanding questions. They dovetail nicely into the vacant storefront grant program and understanding that a little bit more. There were some questions about investing funds, and because the idea would be if we could grow that, and over time, imagine if we had $100,000 kind of sitting there and there was a really big project that came along. So I know John was following up with Leah on the municipal, what we can and can't do. So I would anticipate, depending upon how Bonnie wants to structure the April meeting, we might be able to have a further discussion in April or certainly May. So, but it's moving forward.
Let's see. I think everyone had received Jim Robbins' update, the planning update. So I don't know whether we need to take the time to go over that, but he's had provided a nice summary of some of the projects that the planning board is working on, and we know we've got a lot of strong commercial development, which is we're very fortunate to have at this time. Fred just stepped out. Okay, yes. So I think with that we will, does anyone have any other business?
I do have one quick thing. I had the action item at the end of the last meeting. Todd and Josh and I had reached out to Westborough TV about doing a video by Westborough, something for the EDC committee. So they are very excited and willing to help us with this project. And as a first step, Karen sent us the video that Marlboro uses, and I'm happy to send it to the rest of the committee and you can take a look. One question that I would have is that video was very focused on attracting residents. And so what I'm wondering is that what we want to do, or do we want to more align with the master plan and vibrancy of the business community, or both? So I wanted to throw that out there as you review it and think about the purpose of the video. And then the next step, either the three of us, Josh, Todd, and I, will meet with Westborough TV, or I'll open up to any other members of the committee who want to join that meeting. We're going to meet and talk about building a storyboard and what do we want to accomplish, and then engaging with whoever will be featured in the video.
Great.
My thought is that it should be business and community focused as opposed to attracting folks to live here. I think there are nice ways to augment the conversation or the spot to speak to the strength of our schools and our public services and all of that, but I think that for round one.
I would agree.
Yeah.
That's the same thing I thought when I watched that video. Now Marlboro does have a shortened video that's like a 30-second video I'll send to you, which they air usually on Saturday nights during Phantom Gourmet, which is really focused towards bringing restaurants and that sort of thing into town. I'll circulate that to the committee as well. But that might be something more that we want to focus on versus the residential side of it.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think we've seen the residential development.
Right. Yeah. And so, and with, again, aligning with the master plan, it seems like we have a different vision for what we want to accomplish. So
Definitely. Great. Well, we'll definitely put that on the agenda for next month as well. So, good. Any other business? Thank you for our guests. We greatly appreciate your time and staying longer with us this morning. Thank you to everyone. Our next meeting, it will be on Tuesday, April 7th. So between now and then, we have the Business Expo. So please coordinate with Kim on your availability for April 1st. And I think we'll have a few subcommittee meetings as well between now and then. So thank you very much. Go vote today if you get an opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you. Motion to adjourn?
Oh, motion to adjourn.
Second.
who made the motion?
I did. Let's get out of here.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.